What is up, Fantasyland? I'm JD at GOAT District on the Twitter machine. This is the GOAT District. Guys, in poker, there's a famous saying, if you haven't spot the sucker at the table within a half hour, most likely you are the sucker. And it's no different in the draft room, guys. So what we've been doing here in the district is bringing in the best on the planet at drafting these rosters. And tonight is no different. We bring in one of the best, one of the most respected. We're going to dive deep, give you some tips and tricks. So if you haven't done it yet, smash the like, smash the subscribe. And let's dance.
GOAT District, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? We are back in the district, and I'm back with my two GOATs, the overhyped sleeper, no E on the end, and the OG Fantasy. What is up, boys? Theo, how are you, brother?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be on tonight, back in the district with you guys. We're keeping the great guests going, and I'm stoked.
Yeah, man, tonight's a big one. I know this guy's he's literally a shark, a fish. He's kind of hard to get a hold of, and we got him here on the district tonight. Dan, how pumped are you, brother? You're fresh off a trip, visited some family, the girls. You know, life is great right now, right? You just came from a boat trip.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pumped up because I get to talk with a legend. So I'm excited about that. Every time we've spoken before, it's I learn things, and watching him draft, I learn things. There's just always takeaways. So this is going to be a fantastic show.
Let's wait no further, guys. You know him from FTN Fantasy. You see him out there in the FFPC high stakes streets. Mr. Nelson Sousa, welcome to the GOAT District, my friend.
What's going on, guys? Glad to be on.
Welcome.
Yeah.
We're pumped to have guys. This guy is so serious. He cannot divulge his identity. I mean, the amount of secrets he's gonna share with us tonight is just Nelson, brother. We appreciate you hanging with us. In all seriousness, we know you're a busy man. We got stuff outside of fantasy, but we appreciate you here tonight. And you're one of the people that are out there that are not only sharing your goods and playing the game, but also very well respected from your peers, by your peers. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to get you on. Obviously, we're going to pick your brain, but why don't you just give a little quick for anyone who might not know the Nelson Sousa, give us a quick FF career, your fantasy football career, and maybe a couple highlights, just to let the people know where you're coming from. Well,
first of all, I'm humbled to be on the show that you guys think that highly of me. So I really appreciate that. So thanks for the kind words. And as far as my, fantasy career, the highlights are probably, there's, three of them that stick out. And, one was naturally I've won the FFPC main event back in 2016 with my partner David Hubbard. So that was
That deserves an airport.
That was fun. And then with David, we've partnered for many years, and we also took down the Platinum League over at NFFC. And if you guys are not familiar with it, it's a 20K entry fantasy league, 12-teamer, and you're talking just like the best of the best in that league. So to take it down twice is that's big, for us. So those are really, those are the highlights, of my fantasy football career right now.
That's awesome, man. Is there a format that you lean into? Are you just kind of anything high stakes? Do you play a lot of dynasty, best balls? What's kind of your portfolio look like?
Definitely, it's made up a majority of redraft. I do some best ball. Dynasty, I got into it, I don't know, it was probably like 5-6 years ago, and I just found that I just don't have the time. One of my passions was getting into the content industry and trying to share some of my knowledge and experience and trying to make, other people better players at fantasy football. So I do get a lot of satisfaction of helping others and seeing them succeed in their fantasy leagues. So that was a big part of it. And between that and then obviously I'm a player first, and I do, a decent volume of teams that kind of takes up a lot of my time besides, being married with 2 kids.
Totally, man. Totally. It's we only have so many hours in a day. Why don't you talk to us about FTN Fantasy and some of that content?
Yeah. So I joined FTN Fantasy this year, and I want to say we're not even like up and coming anymore. I just think that the talent that we have there is amazing. We have a lot of guys that are and women that are very sharp in the betting side of sports and fantasy. You got guys, really good at, best ball, dynasty, you name it. And, I came along and I have my coaching package there. So it's, high stakes coaching, and I have a Discord chat on there that I answer, daily questions. Guys can go on there at, any time of day, and ask questions, bounce ideas off of me, and I try to help them and coach them along. They could be in a slow draft, and they'll throw a question out there, and all right, how, team construction, how do I build this team here? I've gone running back. What do we do here? So I think that's very valuable. That helps guys, their thought process, and it helps them kind of think through the picks, because if you just enter a draft and it's just, okay, I'm here, I got a draft sheet, rankings, and let me just pick players and just start clicking buttons, and I'm just going to take a bunch of value. Well, the value kind of goes out the window if you don't know exactly how you're trying to construct the team, in the first place. So the end result could be, yeah, you got a bunch of value, but, what does the team look like? And then, how you going to, adjust, throughout the draft, and then in season, in-season management is huge. For sure. And the in-season management is what limits how many drafts we really should be doing in the off-season, right? Because then you get in the season and you're like, holy crap, how am I going to do all these waivers, right? That's the real work. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the grind, right?
The grind, man.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Before I pass it on to my boys here to kind of pick your brain, as we say, with regards to drafting and some of the goods that you put out there. We're in the fishbowl together in the Dre division. You're in the one spot. A, I just want to know, did you pick the Dre division? And B, just, any thoughts on the fishbowl or your draft or anything before we get into the goodness tonight?
I did. When that email was sent out, I just kind of went, draft preference, 1 through 12, and then I believe, you could pick one of many, musicians, and Dre. I like a lot of his music from back in the day, and with Snoop Dogg, and I like the old school rap along with other music, so just felt like picking them.
Nice. I like it. Same. I was looking for one with not a lot of people in it. Once Scott started filling them up, and Dre was one I put in there. Guys,
I'm just kidding, JD. I saw your name on there, and I was like, I want to be in this.
Nice. Well, we were supposed to get you on earlier, and then we had to change some scheduling around, and I'm thinking maybe he just doesn't want to share too much while we're in the early rounds of the football draft together. I'm joking, man. I'm joking. No, man, I'm glad we're in the division together, because it's always fun to have someone that you want to compete against. And I wanted to say just real quick, I like your little QB build with Lance, Fields, and then Darnold to kind of give you that start, right? If these guys don't pop early, so I kind of like what you did there.
It's a fun draft every year. I've actually had success in it the last 2 years, but
what's your best kind of finish?
Last year, I ended up winning my division, and I had moved on to week 15, and then I lost there. I just got nipped from going on to week 16, so I was actually pretty happy with that result, considering that my 2 quarterbacks that I drafted were Cam Newton and Baker Mayfield. So, to make it that far with those 2 guys is pretty good.
Nice. Yep. Nice. Yeah, it's not an easy tournament, and we don't want to spend too much time on it, but I just, again, I'm happy we're in the division, and it's going to be fun to kind of follow it throughout the season, see how we do. Guys, we're about to get into this stuff. Grab your pen and paper, go grab your coldest beer, throw out that can that you just finished, and let's get into the nitty gritty. Smash the like, smash the subscribe, and let's get to it. Dan, I'm going to pass it to you first. What's your first question here? We're running into the boardroom. We're all sitting down, and let's get into it.
Yeah, so let's just talk about your draft schedule. I mean, obviously you've done quite a few leagues already. How do you handle like drafting in May, June, July, August? When's the best time to draft, do you think? Do all those months have some value to them? And kind of how do you stagger your drafts through those months?
Sure. Good question. Well, looking back at the history, I've been able to evaluate the last few years, how I've done in like May and June drafts compared to like July and August, and then early September right before the season. And I definitely have more success in July, August, first week in September than I do in the other ones. And it's funny because I would like to think that, I'm ahead of everybody else in research and everything. But what I found is the May, June drafts are kind of, it helps me evaluate the player pool. It helps me evaluate what, where guys are going, ADP, things like that. It helps me form my fade list, just in terms of, where I consider guys are going, if I think, guys are going too high or too low. So I mainly, have found that I try to draft it kind of straight up. I take the guys I like, but I'm mostly using it actually, to prepare myself to kind of get in the zone. And I would say like right about now is where, I kind of hit my stride, and I'm seeing the draft board really well, and the draft flow. That's really important. And then when we get into, the main events in August, September.
All right. So you feel like the May, June drafts are a part of your July, August, September success, just because they kind of help you get into the flow mentally. Is that fair to say?
They're expensive mock drafts.
I was waiting to throw that in there.
Right.
What it is, right?
But again, they're expensive, but they're not as expensive as once you start getting into the main events, though, right? Because I mean, the main events are, $1,500 to $1,900 depending on where you're playing and exactly what time you registered and so forth. Whereas these other drafts are $300 to $350 depending on again how many you're playing and all that. So while it's expensive, it's it's definitely a step down from what you're going to be spending, right?
I truly believe that it's well worth it to do drafts early on and get a feel for the draft, where players are going, and then that way you're kind of hitting your stride. But the key to it too is to be careful. You got to remove all biases. So you got to be careful not to get stuck in a rut. So another player that I've partnered with in the past is Chad Schroeder, and he's notorious for starting up football late in the draft season. So he doesn't start drafting until August. So right now he's knee deep in like daily basketball. He's I talked to him like the other day. He's doing NASCAR, stuff like that, and he's probably reading a little bit here and there of football, but he's not really into the research at this point. And then he starts up in August, but he picks up real quickly after a couple of drafts. He gets into the flow of things. And part of what I think helps him, that he's really good at, is he doesn't have strong opinions, or doesn't develop these strong opinions and get into these ruts because he's not drafting in May or June, for example.
Makes sense.
So I do think that, like for me, I've been really, careful with, not forming these strong opinions and being able to change on the fly as the, season moves on. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. I was very high on Miles Sanders last year. And I pegged him as like the breakout running back. He was the guy that, I was going to target, and he was going to smash. He was going to be, a top 5 running back in fantasy. And what ended up happening was he got hurt in the preseason. So, there was a point in time where he like tweaked his knee. It was like some type of knee sprain. And those kind of situations is where you try to avoid that when that happens to a player right before the season. I don't necessarily worry too much about players that are nursing injuries, in May or June. But when you get that close, it's something that you have to, be considerate. You have to consider it, and you have to be ready to like get off the guy. And I was a little too stubborn, and I know better, not to, that Sanders needed to be the guy where I just said, okay, you know what, the teams I have him on, I have enough exposure to him, but I gotta cut back. I gotta, fade this guy, moving forward. And, he just didn't end up having, a great season. So I gotta own that one. But that's one of the things, like, so imagine, Dan, like, you're not doing anything fantasy football related at this point, and then in the next couple of weeks you just start drafting. You haven't formed an opinion. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not up on that hill, saying I'm planting my flag here on Miles Sanders. You're in there, you're drafting, getting a feel for things. So there is something to be said, about that. It's almost like you're drafting with a clear mind. So, you just gotta. I think you gotta be aware of that and not get into a rut.
it's one of those things. It's easy to say and really hard to do, especially if you're drafting, kind of all off season, because it is so easy to just kind of get into those ruts and there's players right now, I find that are getting faded by a lot of people that I'm just, I think everybody's fading them because everybody's fading them, if that makes any sense. It's just like nobody's really thinking that much. And then conversely, people are drafting, certain players where it's like, why is everybody drafting? Because everyone else is doing it. So I think there's a lot to be said for, kind of taking both approaches. You can draft early, but you just, like you said, you've just got to be able to let loose of what you were doing 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago, if need be.
Yeah, you can't stay locked in. What we liked after the NFL draft is not necessarily what we should be doing in August. And I think a lot of guys get so stuck on, I'm not touching this guy this year. This is my guy this year. And all their drafts kind of look the same. And they end up catching themselves and maybe avoiding some values that they should be targeting. And like Dan said, guys get faded for the wrong reasons. And then a lot of the hype names get driven up the board, higher than they should be drafted. So a lot of mistakes people can make early.
So I say it every week, guys. It's a lot like investing. It's a lot like, you read these charts. If you're keeping emotion out of it and you're just following what the chart is saying, you're going to get in and out of some of these opportunities without being biased. But if you do bring in the bias and that into it without focusing on the technical and the obvious value, then you're gonna you're gonna miss out, and that's kind of what happens, and that's what people keep dodging. And I kind of like that because what you're saying, Nelson, it's again, not to bring another comparison, but poker, right? There's an advantage to being at a table for a long period of time, and there's an advantage to sitting down at a table fresh where nobody knows how you play, right? You can take advantage of both scenarios, but they're both two different dynamics. So I think it's the same thing when you're drafting, and it's the same thing in these situations.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I play a lot of poker, so it's a very good analogy because I've been on both ends, and you have those poker nights where you're playing for like 12 hours, at a cash game, and you're tired, you're exhausted, but mentally you have to stay sharp and discipline and still play, the right poker. You still have to play solid, and even though you're tired and exhausted. And it's kind of like that with a lot of us who, we start early and we're drafting all season, and then when August comes, mentally we're just not fresh. We're a little tired, we're a little exhausted, and then it almost becomes a little bit like second nature to us because we've done so many drafts, and it's like, oh, okay, piece of cake, this is easy. And it takes a little bit, we take kind of, the edge off a little bit, where we should be more, we should be sharper than what we are. We got to keep that edge and keep grinding and plowing through, those drafts and not get too complacent or cocky.
100%. No, that's dead on. Theo, I know you had a couple good questions. Why don't you throw one on the table?
So you're very, very well known at this point for your fade list. What is your process for developing the fade list? And then are there some requirements or factors that automatically put people on the list?
Sure. Good question. So my process with the fade list is I always go back and look at, so like one of my rules is I go back and look at the running backs that kind of finished strong from the prior year. And if they were like a waiver wire pickup the prior year, so, no one drafted them, they were off everybody's radar, and for good reason, okay? And mostly this is to do with running backs, and they end up having a good fantasy year. Well, I look at it as that was last year. And this year, if they're getting drafted in like the first 4 or 5 rounds, I automatically put them on the fade list. It doesn't matter who they are. I could have had, a ton of, Myles Gaskin, for example. I'll throw a couple of names out there, but I don't want to go through, the whole fade list, but let's throw a couple examples. So Myles Gaskin is on the fade list, and he was a waiver wire pickup in every draft, and he finished well. He helped a lot of people throughout the season, and people get biased. It's like, you look at it and you're like, oh man, this guy, really helped me last year. I'm going to draft him in the 4th or 5th round this year. And it's like, well, he helped you, and it was last year, but he was a waiver wire pickup. He cost you $30 or $101, to pick him up that week after he broke out, week 1. And he didn't, his draft capital wasn't, the 5th round, for example. So that's part of my process, is eliminating those kind of players. Mike Davis would be another example. So those types of running backs, I'm not going to draft. Another part of the process with the fade list is I take a look at, what did teams do, in the off season, through the draft, free agent, signings, departures, what's the personnel around those players, and I evaluate each one and figure out whether I think, a player on that team, and then this is as I'm drafting. So I'll be doing some drafts in May, and that helps me quickly develop my fade list, because I'm looking at a player and saying, hey, man, I'm not seeing it. I try to remove all my biased opinions. I look at it, objectively. It doesn't matter who it is, so I'll give you another, big example. He's a big name. I've been a huge fan of his for many years. Drafted him a lot last year. Derrick Henry. He's on the fade list. So, a lot of people look at it and point to it like, I don't get it. Like, why are you fading this guy? And another part of the process is I just go back and I take history into consideration, and the numbers just don't add up. You're coming off a career year, and I got to draft you at peak value. And JD, you brought up this point earlier in the show with like stocks. It's just like trading stocks. You don't want to get the freaking stock when it's at peak value. You want to get it when it was depressed. And last year was the time to have Henry, and he put up a monster season. But a guy that's not really involved in the passing game, that's coming off 2,000 yards a career year, those guys, I'm going to avoid those guys. So that's a couple of examples of, why different players are on the fade list for different reasons.
No, I think that's great. And I think that's a great process. I mean, I think a lot of people go through drafts and think about their targets more than guys they should avoid. And I think that the way that you kind of look at drafts by avoiding potential landmines is a really great process that I think a lot of people can take on in their own drafts. And it just, it kind of eliminates any kind of hard decision before you sit down when guys make that list. I think it's a great process.
Yeah, when people ask me, I tell them, like, listen, it's not like I hate the guy. Henry was on a bunch of my teams last year. The year prior to that, he was on a bunch of teams when DeMarco Murray was, in Tennessee. And I'm like, what the heck? I need this guy to get out of the picture so Henry can do his thing, because I knew he could possibly be a monster. But, every year is different, and I try not to be subjective, when I'm putting the fade list together.
We're going to go on the other side of the fence there, Nelson. Guys that you're actually targeting. Maybe discuss a bit of your process and if you want to share a couple of those targets that and not even be curious, in that first round where you're avoiding Henry, is there a guy or a couple of guys that you're, or a position, like, are you a receiver guy in the first round? Like, how you approaching that?
I'd probably say that I'm more of a running back guy in the first round. A majority of my drafts, have started with a running back. As far as targets, there's a few guys. I don't know if Theo's very familiar at this point, with the guys that I'm targeting. So if he wants to, throw out a name and we can talk about it.
Before we do that, is there maybe a metric or something that you look at that just kind of the whole teaching, a man how to fish type of approach for our listeners? Is there something that you identify, whether it's at a specific position or just in general, that puts these guys on your target list?
Sure. Off-season research. Just I start with what did the team, the front office do in the draft? What's the competition? Who are the skill position players around this player? Who, the quarterback, and then a huge factor, coaching. Who's the offensive coordinator? Is it the same guy? Is it a new guy? What's the offensive coordinator's history in terms of, favoring one position over the other? And then I just kind of start, I don't have like a metric per se or a formula. It's just more of a feel, I just kind of, it's a feeling out process and to figure out, okay, these are the guys that I'm going to target because I think they're in for a big year.
Yeah, it's a collection of that research, right? Sorry, Theo, go ahead.
Yeah, so we don't want to give away Nelson's list by any means, but Nelson, would you be comfortable talking about the guy we took in the first round tonight?
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Okay, so Austin Ekeler, one of the guys I know you're high on. How did you come to? How did you? We all like Ekeler. I know Dan is targeting him as well. But how did you come to the conclusion that he was going to be one of your guys this year? Sure.
So they upgraded the offensive line. It's better than what it has been in years past. Justin Herbert at quarterback makes me more comfortable with Ekeler because he's young, up and coming gunslinger. So I think he can challenge, defenses. So that helps. It's not like, they have like some scrub back there at QB and they don't have it figured out. He looks like he's the franchise QB. He's got pretty decent weapons in Keenan Allen, Mike Williams around him, and the coaching staff, that came aboard, and with Lombardi coming from the Saints and kind of their history and how they ran their offense, I'm just kind of connecting the dots and projecting Ekeler as, Alvin Kamara, basically in that offense. That's how I'm looking at it. So, plus talent matters. And I think Austin Ekeler is a very talented player, and I don't think we've seen his best year yet.
Nice. Love that. I just started an underdog, one of those tournaments that they have the best ball ones with in the 4 or the 5 spot with an Ekeler build. And that's exactly, I think Dan and I have been talking about that for over a year now, just Ekeler and just looking like Kamara out there. And I think that, he's one of those guys that you can mix up your rosters nicely by even taking him a bit earlier in that first round.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So one of the things I've seen you say in various places is, if you have to see it before you act on it, you're not going to do well. I guess would be, I'm probably paraphrasing, but how exactly would you phrase that and tell us a little bit more about that thought process?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much what you said. I'm a big believer in that, you have to get the guy before it actually happens. So my saying is kind of like, if you have to see it, you're always going to be behind the eight ball. You're always going to be finishing, average in your league. You have to you have to do the research, and you have to have conviction in your research. And I believe, like, you got to take a stance at some point. You can't sit there and kind of flip flop and it's like, oh, I haven't seen Eckler do it, but I've seen this guy do it, and he's going around the same ADP. So, I feel like he's safer, so I'm going to take him. So I think, to win, if you're playing in a confined league in a tournament, I think there's two styles to drafting also. I think that in a confined league, you can definitely go more of a safer route because you're just trying to beat 11 teams. But in a tournament style, or for the people out there that are kind of like GPP, for daily fantasy, you're trying to beat a lot of teams, hundreds if not thousands of teams in an overall contest to try to win big money. And you have usually, if you have a couple of guys that are going to be breakout players, you usually need to have them on your team. At the end of the season, you don't usually see on the guy's roster the guy that that wins it all. He usually has that one or two breakout players that like totally smashed their average draft position. So if you don't bet on the come, that's kind of like another saying of mine is, in terms of like poker, the example is like, if you flop a flush draw, you bet it. You don't sit there and check and then hit the flush draw and then you don't get paid off. So you gotta bet it like it's coming. And I'm a big believer in that, where as long as you do the research and it's sound and you you stay disciplined, I think that it's important to find those guys that haven't done it but are primed for a breakout.
And I think you're touching on, again, we got parallels here with poker and kind of trading. That whole saying, buy the news and sell the hype, applies, directly here, where you got to take that information, but take the actual information and then figure out your own approach to it. Because if you're waiting for everyone else to figure the approach and then for you to get that, by then it's too late. And we talk about it every week. You listen to some maybe more mainstream shows, or they're talking about buys and sells, and it's like, yeah, these were buys like maybe 2 months ago, but now you're buying them kind of at that peak value, so you need to be ahead of the game, and you need to make your own decisions based on that news, as opposed to you waiting for that hype to go either way.
100%.
Guys, before we keep going, and we're going to get deeper and maybe into more specifics, because it's one of these things when you get a guy like Nelson on, you want to take advantage, but we can't forget our supporters, our friends over at the FFPC. Guys, this is the season right now. But you hear a guy, the three of us, we talk about it every week. Best ball it's like the you're training for fantasy football. If you're not doing best ball, in my opinion, you're behind the eight ball. And you heard Nelson talk about it tonight. So on the FFPC, whether it's $5, all the way up to, what is it, Dan? You're my nosebleed meter.
You can spend $1,250 on a best ball if you'd like, or as little as $5. So find your comfort level.
There you go. And that's just to get you started. Once you get into the goodness, they got $125 entry for, guys, $100,000 for first place, $550,000 in prize money. That's a big best ball tournament. They've got some redraft tournaments. Again, we'll get deeper in with Nelson here, but guys, the Football Guys Championship, the main event, we're talking about $500,000. And guys, go back in the last couple of weeks, the guests that we've had on the GOAT District, again, where winners hang, they've won these tournaments, not just once, guy like Abib twice. twice back to back, 750 grand. What's up? He needs like a chain. He needs like one of those gold diamond chains, 750K, and it just says "What's up" under it. That's I gotta talk to him about that. Anyways, guys, Dynasty from $77. This is the time. Either get in through the site or get in through Dynasty Depot, because I'm telling you, the later we go into the off season, the harder it's going to be to get into these dynasty leagues on the FFPC, and you want to be in here to make that moolah, right? So guys, myffpc.com. Again, I've had a bunch of you reach out to me in the last couple of weeks. I appreciate that. If you're not on the site already, you're getting on there. You want that extra GOAT District bonus from the FFPC, you come knock on my door, you knock on Dan's door, you knock on Theo's door, and we'll hook you up with access to that bonus, that sign up bonus. Guys, let's get back into it. And Nelson, I'm going to start it off by a bit of a rewind here. Let's take a macro approach. How would you describe your draft approach? Are you, again, kind of that parallel with poker? Are you kind of that aggressive player? Are you kind of sitting back, waiting for that value, waiting to see what comes to you? Well, how would you describe your draft approach?
I think it's an ebb and flow, but I'd probably say that I'm more of an aggressive drafter. I think if teams, players sat back and looked at some of my drafts, they probably see that I take some players, ahead of ADP, as opposed to, just kind of sitting there and picking off value. And I think both ways work. There is times in a draft, like Theo and I have drafted a couple of teams where I don't put blinders on and just say, nope, every round it's going to be this guy and that's it. And just, and just keep, taking those same players. I do try to keep an open mind, each round and see where guys are going. And sometimes there's a guy, a perfect example was the other day. It wasn't with Theo, but like the other day I was doing a draft and Kyle Pitts had made it to the 5-6 turn at the NFFC, and I had never seen him there before. He always goes, fifth round consistently. And I said, well, if there's going to be a point in time where, I'm going to draft this guy, if I don't take him here where I've never seen him go before, then I'm just never going to have any exposure to him. So, that would be an example of, I like the talent, but, I'm not too thrilled where he's going in drafts right now, just because he's a rookie tight end. And again, just going back on history. But yeah, if the price is right, I'll definitely consider a guy. So I would say that I'll draft for value, but yeah, my DNA is more of an aggressive drafter.
I like it. We like it. Dan, yeah. I'm gonna pass this over to you for some questions. But guys, if you're watching right now, because we see some comments in the chat and we appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have any question, guys, drop them in the comments. We'll throw them on the board. We'll get Nelson to answer them. Smash the like, as we like to say, because that's your way of supporting the show. Dan, why don't you take these questions to the next level, my friend?
Yeah. So one thing I've definitely noticed is I've seen quite a few of Nelson's drafts this year, and I really noticed that your aggressiveness kind of matches your confidence in a way. Like if you're really confident about certain players, you'll be pretty aggressive about going to get them, but then you'll pair that with taking the value on players maybe that you're less confident about, but you see, like you were just talking about Kyle Pitts, that you see Pitts is going in a place where you can't normally get him, so you take that opportunity to kind of diversify a little bit. Is that a fair thing to say? And how would you describe your that aspect of your drafting?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's so many examples of it, that I've been able to share my draft boards with the subscribers at FTN. And, another example is, I'm not really a big early quarterback kind of guy. So that means, I'm going to have limited exposure to Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler, Dak, those guys. But I do believe that there's, if the right spot presents it, especially being a volume drafter, that matters. I'll consider those guys. So, another example, it was a draft the other night, and Mahomes fell. I was in the one hole. It was a McCaffrey team, and he ended up falling. So NFFC, as you know, Dan, is third round reversal. So it was the end of the third round, the 3-4 turn for NFFC, and he was there. Never makes it there. Mahomes is locked in as a early third, mid third round pick. There, and it's usually the Tyreek or Kelsey team is usually pairing those two up. And he made it to me, and I'm like, what? This is gonna be a unique pairing in a overall contest. McCaffrey with Mahomes, probably not going to be too many of those. So I'm going to take the opportunity to, take this player. So I would say, some would see it as value, which it was a value pick, but also game theory and being strategic in how I build my teams matter also.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense.
Dan, I'm going to throw the question in here because I kind of want to get into specifics with Nelson. Nelson, you good with time? I the bad host that I am, I kind of forgot to ask you before we got into this. Do you have a?
I got all night, baby.
Oh, you should not tell us that. Dan, what's our longest pod?
This one.
Exactly. It's in the book already. So we got a question from Shrikant Reddy, 8th pick in Superflex, 1 PPR. Would you take one of the top 5 QBs or take someone like Saquon, Zeke there?
Superflex. I'd probably take the quarterback. I'm not in love with those running backs there if those are the options. So I'd probably go with one of those QBs. If you can get, Kyler, Dak, Mahomes and Allen are probably, locked in where they're going to go before the 8th pick. But, there's a chance that, Kyler or Dak make it there. So I'd probably go that route.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because you're probably getting a good running back on the way back anyway. Mm-hmm. And, trying to get those elite quarterbacks, they're going to disappear pretty fast in a Superflex.
And also, what I would do, like my strategy, I wasn't able to do it in the Scott Fishbowl League that we're in together, JD, but if I was kind of towards the back end and I was able to get one of those quarterbacks, I would punt my second QB. So I wouldn't be taking an early QB or waiting like third round and taking like a Matt Ryan or something like that. I would have the elite quarterback, and then I would just hammer running back, wide receiver, and then just take one of those like later QBs as my number 2.
So basically you're saying you wouldn't do what I did and take Rodgers in the next round after taking Lamar Jackson in the first.
I mean, Rodgers, it could work out great, and and Rodgers comes back and it works out fine for you. It all depends on like the rest of your draft and what picks you made. But me personally, I'm probably saying that that's like a little bit of a reach, and there was probably really good, running backs there. For example, I ended up with Eckler. So for me to start McCaffrey, Eckler, I'm jumping for joy, with that pick. So I'm probably taking Eckler there than Rodgers, that's just my opinion because I'm high on Eckler this year.
I don't disagree. I was kind of trying to segue more into, I wanted your input on the Rodgers situation. Like, what are your thoughts on that situation specifically? And then 2, I just want to know, again, leaning like teaching a man how to fish, how do you usually play situations like that? Do you try to get ahead of it and kind of figure out where you think it's going to go and kind of draft based on that? Or are you kind of, I always refer to Dan. He always tries to teach me patience in this game, with regards to maybe wait for the situation to develop. So what's your general approach to these kind of situations?
The easy answer to that is that I try to leverage my friendship that I have with a buddy of mine out in LA. He actually, without divulging, too much, information on him, but like he's well connected within the NFL between players, front office people, sports agents, things like that. And, I try to leverage that relationship and see if he's got any information. And unfortunately, the whole Rodgers situation, my guess is as good as anybody's on what he's going to do. If I lean one way, I'd probably lean that they kiss and make up, and he comes and plays. But it's a lean of like 52%, 48.
Yeah. It's one of those, right? I just want to throw, before I pass it to my boys here, Joey Brown throwing. I've learned a lot from Nelson. He can help players a lot. Why don't you just remind Nelson? You talked about coaching. I know that's something. I mean, tons of goodness tonight, but imagine getting kind of that one-on-one action. So just remind people where they can find that, how they can find you and get that service from you.
Yeah, it's ftnfantasy.com. Go there to the site, look for my coaching package. There's several packages, but you can do an NFL all access package, or you could just do my coaching package. It's up to you. And what I would say is that, what was the other question? Sorry. It was where can they find?
Yeah, no, it was just with regards, because you mentioned there was a coaching available.
Oh, yeah.
Just where they can find that.
Yeah, and it's $199. So, what I can recommend to everyone is, I'm not a huge, salesman. I'm not very good at, probably marketing myself, but my honest opinion of it is, if you're doing any type of decent volume or decent, dollar leagues where it's in upwards of $1,000 that you're going to be investing, then the $200 that you're going to spend on my package is well worth it. Or if you're that guy that's in kind of like the buddy league or the old college, fantasy league that you've gotten your ass kicked, every year, but it only costs $100, but it's bragging rights, and you wanna just win that league and take, $100 loss, then it's well worth it also.
No doubt about that. Those leagues really hit hard. Those leagues really hit hard.
Guys, that's how you walk into your league, with the Scarface, with the machine gun in your hand after you talk to Nelson to walking in your draft, helping you out with your draft. You're walking in with that power, right? So you got Joey Brown expressing that he's obviously benefited from those services. Again, sorry, Theo, before I pass to you guys, because I want to make sure our listeners get their questions in. Our audience here, is draft capital and college production more important than situation and athletic traits for rookies? Example, he's talking about Tutu Atwell compared to Nico Collins or Armand.
No, not at all. To me, like for college, like I don't need to see the production necessarily. It's all about the skill set for the player and then the fit, because there's so many situations where a college player, I'll like the talent and they just go to the wrong team, and situation matters, I'm trying to think, like this year, like I get a good example is, I think ETN is the best running back coming out of college. I think he's better than Najee Harris, talent-wise. But if they flip-flop that situation, I'm taking ETN in the first round, every draft, but they went to different situations, and I think that that factors in, where you got to factor in skill set and not get too hung up on how talented a guy is or how productive he was in college. You got to look at, the fit with the team that they're on.
Do you think that weighs, just to add to the question, do you think that weighs on certain positions versus others? Just because you talked about running back, obviously with the offensive line and, how that offense is in general, like that makes a big difference. Does it weigh more on a certain position, or you think that's just kind of across the board?
Definitely more at running back than the other positions.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to I want to throw in a couple things.
Sorry, Dan, not to interrupt you. I apologize.
No,
but
go ahead.
To give you that example, my next favorite running back coming out of this class is actually Kylan Hill. And, he went to a situation where, he needs a couple of injuries in order to be a factor. But I think if he ever got an opportunity, you would see what I see and what I think, he's capable of. So I think he's actually a very talented running back that, people are underestimating. And it sucks that he went to the Packers, where it would have been nice if like he landed like with the Dolphins, for example, a team like that, where I'd feel like, hey, this kid, the talent's going to show up and they have no choice but to play him. But in Green Bay, you got Jones and you got Dillon kind of entrenched in there.
It's funny. Yeah. Just today I was hearing C. Salami going on about Hill. And it's funny that I haven't heard the name a lot, but you're the second guy today to mention that, and two guys that that are in the know. So that's a little, guys, write that down. Sorry, Dan.
Great deep dynasty guy.
Yeah, and those are the guys you want to hang on to and just kind of see what happens. So it's one of the places where dynasty and redraft kind of intersect a little bit. But I just wanted to throw out there, Nelson was talking about, why would you want to subscribe to something that costs $199? I'm a subscriber. I don't have any problem saying that. I think it's important to, I subscribe to several different sites, and all of them offer something unique to me. And that's the reason why I continue to subscribe to them. And, one of the things I like about FTN is, I do get the chance to, pick Nelson's brain a little bit, somebody who's got skin in the game, and has a successful past. And, I'm not crazy enough to think I have all the answers or anything like that. I want to find out what other successful people are thinking about different situations in the NFL and, the different players, all of that, and be able to kind of add that into the hopper. And, I'm not going to agree with Nelson on absolutely everything. But when he has something to say about the situation, I'm certainly going to take that under advisement and think about, does that make sense to me? And, for the most part, we have a lot of players that we both liked going into the season that, that it just kind of gave me that little bit more confidence to, to hit them hard. But there were definitely a couple places where I was like, maybe I shouldn't be quite so high on a guy, or maybe I need to be a little bit higher on a guy. And somebody with skin in the game, and I know that's kind of a touchy subject to a lot of people, but I think it does matter. It does mean something when you've got somebody who really is, they're putting their money where their mouth is. So that's my endorsement for Nelson. So take it for what it's worth.
I mean, we've talked about it on the Discord chat at FTN with some guys where that conversation came up. And I told them, I said, listen, guys, if you're really good at taking in information, processing it, filtering it, then yeah, by all means, you should subscribe, not just to me. I'm not arrogant enough to sit here and say, hey, you should just be listening to me and nobody else. I've got all the answers. There's a lot of talented, people out there, fantasy analysts that, they might not play in as many leagues as I do, but they're still talented in their research and what they're, in what they do and what they have to offer. My only, tip, for people, advice is that make sure that you can process all that information, because you're getting different opinions from several sources. And if you're not good at filtering it, you're going to get confused, and you're going to F up your draft big time. So that's the biggest thing. If you're not good at filtering, I would say keep it to a couple of guys that you listen to. Don't freaking listen to the Sirius XM radio, in your car. Just put it on some music. Don't listen to the channel, because if you're just taking that information and just kind of going with it, and then you subscribe to this website and that website, and before you know it, you're just confused in what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, and to be clear, the part of what the appeal of some websites is their tools. The appeal of other websites is, the advice and the thought process and so forth like that. So, there's reasons that you might want to be other places, but the nice thing is FTN is really adding a lot of tools in too. So it's quickly becoming a lot more of a one-stop shop.
No, absolutely. And the assurance that I give people, and Dan touched on it, is that the advice I'm giving you, and for a lot of subscribers, this is very important. To Dan, it sounds like it is. Any advice I'm giving you is advice that I'm doing for my own teams. So, I'm doing the exact same thing. So I'm not telling you to do X, Y, and Z, and then I have no, I've got nothing, really to back it up with. I'm putting my money where my mouth is, which, it is a touchy subject. I think it was brought up on, several places on Twitter and things like that. And, I just stayed out of the conversation, because I believe that we can all coexist. And I think there's analysts out there that can definitely give out good advice that maybe necessary. They might not have the funds to be involved in higher dollar leagues. Number one. Number two, maybe they do, and they just are not good at drafting, because the draft in itself there's draft flow, and they're just not good at putting a team together. So that's possible, but a very good fantasy analyst that can give, very good advice, or in-season management, so, I like to think that, there's guys out there, fantasy analysts that are more talented than I am, but in terms of, being a player and doing what I say, or I'm advising, Dan to do, he can see, on my teams, the players I'm talking about fading, the players I'm talking about targeting, how to build the team. I'm doing the same thing, and I'm doing it for, thousands of dollars invested.
Right, exactly. And to me, a lot of it is the subtleties, especially with team building. If there's one thing that I think I've upped my game on, is just being able to put together a lineup that makes a little bit more sense, internally, and that, tells a little bit better story, externally, as far as like how I think the NFL season is going to shake out. So, definitely important concepts, and just seeing, how other people are doing that is very, very helpful. So, no matter what you're doing, be out there looking at draft boards and finding out why people are doing things the way they're doing them.
Yeah, I think Nelson touched on two very important things that I don't think is talked about very often, to be honest, on a lot of shows that maybe I listen to, or just identifying where you're getting those resources. I think that's very important. And then filtering a lot of the information, whether that's news, headlines, clickbait, like, where you're getting your information, the podcast you listen to, the show you listen to. And Nelson, you talk about, walking the walk, and that's something we're really big on here on this show. Everyone we have on, the guys, Theo and Dan, I mean, we're doing and talking about all these things that we talk about on the shows. These are things we're doing in our leagues. We're telling you we're buying this guy. It's because we've been buying him for the past couple days, or we're looking at buying him. So I think that is important. I think that Dan and Theo are really good at explaining why they're doing certain things and at identifying certain trends. I think my strength is exactly that, Nelson, is kind of identifying where to get good sources and just filtering it down, down the funnel to get it to the information that I need, and then base my information on it. In university, kind of those late night trying to get that paper done, you're grabbing a million different resources. I was really good at crunching it down and getting it done quickly. In that manner. And I think that it's applied here in fantasy, and you talk about it there. And I think identifying where you get the resources is very important, guys. Who you listen to, their track records, what they're doing. And Nelson talked about different resources can give you different benefits and different tools. And Dan's talking about tools. Guys, you're not going to war empty-handed, and fantasy football is war. So you got to bring the right tools. You got to have the right information, and that's what we're trying to bring, and that's what we're talking about. Theo, I've talked long enough. I know you've got a lineup of questions, so go ahead.
Yeah. So one thing I've loved discussing with we've had a lot of very successful redraft players. We had Abib Agbatoba, Dwayne McFarland, Chris Vaccaro, and now Nelson tonight. But these guys aren't really dynasty guys. Nelson, for our dynasty listeners, who are some rookies that you really, really like? I know you've touched on a few, and not necessarily guys who are going to make a huge impact this year or redraft, but just guys you really like to have very strong NFL careers.
For this year?
For this year, and maybe there's a guy that he might not do a whole lot redraft this year. I don't want to pigeonhole it. Just rookies you really like. With a dynasty focus.
And you're looking more kind of like off the radar type guys, right?
Yeah, and also interested to hear, if you could share your thoughts on Chase and Pitts and Harris, the high profile rookies as well.
Sure. So let's start with Chase. So, watching his tape from, 2 years ago, to me, he's as legit as it comes. My comparison to him was actually Odell Beckham. Watching him, obviously went to the same school and everything, but it was just the fact of like his hands and his ability, like his leaping ability and body control is very similar to Beckham. So I think he's going to be legit. So he's definitely worth the early round pick. Kyle Pitts, I think long term, I think also he's going to be legit. But at the same time, I think it's going to be a couple of years before he turns into that monster. So I wouldn't expect this monster rookie season.
Sorry. I had something in my throat there. Sorry, guys.
No problem. And then as far as a couple of under the radar guys, I mentioned Kylan Hill. He's, a favorite of mine when I was watching him. I think he's a very talented back. I think the guy that's going to make the impact this year, that's, a little bit under the radar is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Is that how you pronounce it? Amon-Ra.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't think very highly of the group of receivers there in Detroit. And from what I've heard, the kid's going to end up playing the slot this year, or they're going to try him out there. and I think that fits Goff's skill set perfectly. So he would be a guy that, my prediction, I don't want to get, too crazy, here, but outside of Chase, I could see him outperforming every rookie wide receiver this year. And, it's not just in terms of, I think he's just more talented. I think the talent and the opportunity, the location fits perfectly. Tight end, the kid that I like is Kylan Granson. He ended up going to the Colts. So he's a kid that I think for that coaching staff and everything and what they're trying to do, I think it's not going to happen this year, but a couple of years down the road, I think you're going to be hearing about this kid. So he would be somebody that would be on my radar in Dynasty for sure.
As a Colts fan, I'm very happy to hear that. And he's someone I've grabbed, especially those Superflex tight end preems. I mean, you're getting them like super late in rookie drafts.
Mm-hmm. And then quarterback, the under the radar guy for me, from watching him, I think he needs to develop a little bit, but he went to the perfect spot, is Kellen Mond. I think he actually could be somebody
Minnesota
in a couple of years. Yeah.
Yep.
How quickly do you think that's like just for someone investing and planning with Cousins and like a 2 to 3 kind of plan?
I would say in a couple of years. I got to look back at like Cousins' contract to see when that runs out, but I think he's a few years now into it. Dan,
our contract guru, you got any insight on that, Mr. Minnesota?
Yeah, he's this year and next year. I believe his contract does run out after next year. Everything's fully guaranteed. There is a way the Vikings could weasel out of it after this year, but it would be probably not ideal. So we're probably looking for 2 years on Mond is the most likely circumstance, and unless because it's just completely flames out this year, then I could see them trying to make that move earlier.
Any comps, guys? Like any idea what this can be, and then I'll let Theo finally get us. Like just quick comp and just an expectation, I guess, for someone investing for 2 to 3 years.
Kellen Mond, like a comp as far as like a player,
like a player, player comp.
Yeah, some we've seen.
Not exactly the same size, but I would comp him to Russell Wilson. Not a very active runner, but definitely can run. I think his deep ball is pretty good. I like how he throws the ball. I just think that he was in a situation where he was in a pro style offense, but it wasn't the best situation. He didn't have the greatest talent around him. So I just think he needs like a couple of years, and he could be, develop into something for sure.
All right, Superflex, man, get out there and get it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's somebody I've had my eye on this entire offseason as well. And I think Wilson's a great comp because I see him as a guy who he's going to use his legs, and he can certainly get some yards and maybe some touchdowns with his legs, but a lot of what he's going to do is just kind of extend the play and wait for the defense, for the secondary to break down someplace and then launch it in there.
I had one more question, but I want to get back to a redraft question. Another question I've enjoyed asking some of our high-profile, successful drafting guests is, what's your approach to the waiver wire? Do you have a general process? Are you a spend it early type guy, or do you like having a little left in the tank for the end of the season? What's your general approach with waiver wire in the high-stakes leagues?
Sure. I pride myself in being, I believe that at the end of the day, this is just, confidence. I'm not, being arrogant. I feel like nobody's going to outwork me on the waiver wire. I think that I'm one of the best in finding the right players and how to, find the right guys that fit your team. So listen, through the years, I've got plenty of experience in, drafting some shit shows, for teams. And, I've prided myself in, being able to grind and kind of, mix and match and be able to, post a respectable, finish in some leagues, even though the team just, was pretty much, dead on arrival. So that's that part. As far as the process, yeah, what I do is I'm watching all the games on Sunday. I've got, I've been fortunate to have a nice setup downstairs. I've got a movie room, several TVs, so I've got all the games going. And then what I do is after the Sunday night game is over, I have a list of players of that I want to go back and possibly watch a little bit of game film on, and that's what I do on Mondays. So on Monday, I'm just basically, a running back, starter got injured, or a certain running back came in the game and played a few more snaps than what I was expecting to see. And I want to watch a little bit of it. What was that running back releasing out of the backfield? Were they keeping him in to pass protect? That determines, what kind of upside I think he has in the offense. I'll look at, same thing with receivers. Yeah, it's great. Box score receiver, 3 for 120 and a touchdown. And when you watch it, it's like, oh, okay, broken coverage, defense didn't care about this scrub running down the field, totally, blew coverage, and that's not happening again all year. Or, wait a minute, this kid flashed, it was a contested catch where he made a great move in the open field and got by the free safety or whatever, and he's someone to keep on the radar. So, those are the things that box scores are just not going to tell you. Then you got to be able to put it into context, and that's where I think stats can only tell you so much, and then you got to be able to watch the game. So there's that part of the process, and then on Tuesday, Monday night into Tuesday, I'm busy building bid groups. So I'm putting guys into my bid group, analyzing each team. How did I do? The following, this past week, setting lineups. Do I have guys on bye? Who are my who are my targets for that week, for example? And then I spend a lot of time on social media and the radio listening to the guys with the biggest voices and the biggest following to see who they're talking about, because then what that does is it helps me evaluate, kind of like with stocks, what we were talking about. It helps me evaluate of what this guy is going to go for, what is the price, and then I determine if I think that price for that player is worth it. Do I think he's going to be overpriced? Wednesday night, people are just going to be blowing their load, trying to pick up this guy for $400 and he's not worth it. Or I'm going to say to myself, you know what? I want to get this guy and he makes sense for this team, and I'm going to spend, $411 or whatever number it is that I come up with. So I think that's a piece there that I try to. I don't focus so much on. So to answer your question, I'm not a big spend fab early kind of guy. I'm more conservative with that. I'm looking to beat out the next highest bid by $1. I'm not looking for, gotta get this guy and I'm going, 780 on this guy just to get him. I'm big on evaluating and listening to the market and what who the masses are talking about, and based on that kind of hype will tell me, okay, this guy is going under the radar, or no one's talking about him. Great. He's going to go under the radar. I can get him for a couple of bucks. Or, you know what? This guy's just way overhyped and I'm just going to let him go because I don't believe in the talent, even though, you know, he scored like a couple of touchdowns and everyone's, you know, hyping him up. So it's very important when it comes to, you know, your fab work in not develop. You got to have an unbiased opinion. You got to be very, you know, objective in that part.
Guys, that's if you didn't pay attention, maybe you were talking to your kid or you had to grab some salt and pass it to your wife during the last 5 minutes, but that's you want to rewind. You know, back in the day, we used to rewind that shit, and that's definitely a situation you want to rewind because Nelson's talking about, you know, things that I don't think most drafters or most people are definitely getting into the details about, and I think that you've done that, and I think that's so valuable for the listeners.
I think with respect to Nelson's answer, I think it goes back to your strategy with your fades and your targets, and it seems like you apply that to the waiver wire as well, and it probably helps you avoid spending money on guys you should not, which is kind of half the battle in the waiver wire. I mean, we all go back and we look at mistakes we made during each season. You know, I spent money on D'Ernest Johnson in a league or two last year. It's money you never get back. And I think every year we have a horror story or two. And I think if you just kind of avoid the pitfalls and end up spending your money in a better manner, you know, that's how you grind it out.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, I have a Google Doc on Google Sheets that I create a spreadsheet for each week, and I go through my targets by position, and then I rank them, and I also put in a dollar amount of what I think they should be going as far as in the range. So I have a high, you know, the highest max bid is and I explained it to subscribers that, listen, if your team's in desperate need of a running back, then you've got to be in this higher range. If your team's, you know, 4 deep at running back, then yeah, it's great getting this guy, but what are you going to do with him once you get him? You're not playing him. He's on your bench. So why did you go and spend that $400? So let's make sure that, you know, no one in your league, let's keep everyone honest, and let's put a decent bid on him, but like, you don't need them. So that's really important too in evaluating what your roster looks like. And then I have notes that I keep, you know, next to each player. And that's definitely, if we had talked, you know, we knew each other back then, Theo, I would have definitely told you D'Ernest Johnson was not he was a fade. He was a guy that we're not bidding on him, people. Leave him alone. Let people, you know, spend their budget. And the other guy too early in the season was Ty Johnson. If you remember with Detroit, there was like
that was red. People were red hot for Ty Johnson. You saw, you know, 50% fab or more in some of those NFFC leagues. He was the metrics darling. There's a lot of people behind that when Carry-On went down.
Yeah.
Barely on taxi squads right now in Dynasty.
Oh,
Right.
And obviously, you know, let's face it, guys. I'm giving you 2 examples that I was right on. You know, I'm not giving you the examples of guys that I was wrong. But my point that I'm trying to make is I feel pretty confident that I'm gonna evaluate and make sure that you avoid the landmines. And you know, avoiding those 2 guys, you know, saved you, you know, $500-600 in fab money to be used, you know, next week or later in the season. So that's just as important. Is, you know, there's a bunch of guys that, you know, I definitely recommended that I got wrong and didn't work out, but the key is not making it costly.
I'd like to go on the record and point out to the GOAT District listeners that I did not bid 25% on D'Ernest Johnson. It was probably closer to like a 10%, but it was still money I wish I had back.
Yeah. you always wish you had that.
Absolutely.
That's awesome, man. No, I like I was saying, Nelson, I love that you're talking about this because there's different, like, I think because there's no trades in these redraft big tournaments, and you draft your roster, and then your only way to make any like changes is literally through the waiver wire, right? So I think it's very important to manage it, and it's it's good to get these golden nuggets about how you approach it. I think Dan and I approach it in a similar way. I haven't played with Theo yet in the redraft game, co-owning or in season, but we're kind of similar where we'll set the price and we're not going to overpay. We're basically trying to get out of value in most situations. And I think, that's kind of a conservative but good way to approach it, because you might hit a Meg Davis, but you might also, overspend on it. And I'm blanking right now. If you guys can help me out with like someone you spend big on in the first couple of weeks and just doesn't give you much, the rest of the season, can easily happen. So I love that you said you're just trying to get $1 over, what the next bid is, because that's huge, man. That's an approach, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Go ahead, Dan.
And also having money left in the tank as you get later in the season, where you can prevent people in your league from making the necessary move that they might need in week 12 is a very, very valuable thing, especially when in these leagues where you're really, it's a huge difference in the amount of money you're making finishing first or second. The margins are very tight often, so it's good to have some of that money left in the tank when possible.
Yeah, for sure.
You never want to blow your load early, right, boys? That's
there you go. There you go, JD.
The waiver wire lesson of the night, guys. Before we close this out, and we got to do a little OTC with our boy Nelson, a little on the clock, Nelson. Like, if you're drafting right now, are you doing a little like Antonio Brown, or are you maybe going to go, I don't know, Curtis Samuel?
I'm taking Antonio Brown over Samuel right now.
Okay.
But I like Samuel.
I like that. You going Tyler Lockett or Deontay Johnson?
Lockett.
All right, guys.
I'm a Juju guy this year.
Yeah, I mean the value, right? He's the last one taken in most scenarios, anyways, that I'm experiencing. Guys, you got any good on the clocks right now? I got like 1 million I could throw at Nelson right now, but
I have a good one. With regards to FFPC, especially Dallas Goedert or Noah Fant.
Well, they don't really go in the same spot, right? Fant goes a couple of rounds later.
They've separated slightly, but they're kind of right next to one another in the tight end pecking order. Usually, probably within about 10 slots. Those two, Goddard kind of moved up slightly, but they're close enough.
Yeah, I feel like looking at some FFPC drafts, I feel like Goddard is getting a little too much hype, and I think it's just gonna. He's going to ascend even more once, Zach Ertz, let's say, gets out of the picture there and he gets traded. I can only imagine where he's going to go, and he's going to be a fade for me. So I would lean Fant.
Okay. There you go.
How about Gus Edwards or Jamal Williams?
Jamal Williams, I think he's going to be involved more in the passing down work than people believe. I think everyone's looking at it just thinking that he's going to be a backup there in Detroit and Swift is going to get all the passing down work, and that's not what I'm hearing. Jamal Williams is definitely going to be involved in the on passing downs. I think people are going to lose their shit, week 1.
Javonte Williams or Kareem Hunt?
Hunt. I'm not a Javonte Williams guy, unfortunately. I think he's gotten really hyped, and I don't think he's really all that good of a player. So that might be a little bit of a hot take. I think I think that's going to set a lot of people off. But that's my That's my thought on him. So I'm going Hunt because Hunt is you're going to use, and I'm sorry for the long-winded explanation.
No, it's
but,
great. It's great.
We encourage it. No,
Yes.
Okay.
keep
So-
winding.
So he's got standalone value, but Theo and I, we talked about this the other day. Kareem Hunt, if Nick Chubb goes down, hypothetical, we're not rooting for injuries here, but hypothetically, if he goes down, where does Kareem Hunt go in a draft?
Higher than
He's-
Nick Chubb is going right now.
Yeah.
Correct.
He's Tony Pollard on steroids.
If Nick Chubb went down and Kareem Hunt saw the entire backfield work,
It's
I
over.
think we'd be taking him, around he'd be right around the 106, somewhere right around
The
there.
winning
All right, so I'm
percentage
gonna
with him on your roster would be high.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you that I think he settles in as the third overall pick. So right
There
now
you
you got McCaffrey, Dalvin, and it's been lockstep, just those two. And then the draft, that's where the draft gets crazy. I think Hunt would settle in as the number 3 over all those other backs if he's got the whole workload to himself.
All right, Nelson, I'm gonna go to the chat to close this out. Judy or Sutton?
Judy. Sutton's coming off an injury. Judy is the guy that I think he's more talented, all around receiver. And I think he's going to be more involved this year.
Sounds like you're saying that because I got him at 908 Sutton in our fishbowl. But our boy Joey Brown wants to know, was asking that. We're going to go to Johannes Sanchez. Sorry if I messed up your first name. Higgins or Chase out there in Cincinnati?
Chase.
Right.
Chase is he's the one with the draft profile. You're talking about, elite wide receiver. Higgins had a solid rookie year, but he's not Chase.
I think it's a kind of a first half, second half, like a roster construction type of thing. I'm probably going Higgins first half and Chase second half, but that's just me. Nobody cares what I think. So Shrikant Reddy is saying Michael Thomas or Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson. I think Robinson's proven that it doesn't matter what quarterback's throwing him the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the case with Michael Thomas.
That's valid. That's valid. We'll do one more. Our boy Reddy here has been hanging out the whole show, talking about a couple guys we've already talked about at the running back position. Eckler or Henry, Nelson?
Oh man, you're gonna have to subscribe to FTN on that one.
There you go.
I love it.
That one's a no-brainer.
Look at this guy saying he's not in marketing. Come on, man.
That one's a no-brainer there. And if you want to find out, you gotta subscribe to FTN.
I love it. I love the cliffhanger. Guys, check him out. Nelson, remind the peeps where they can find you, your goodness, and on those dollar bills that they're going to find by following you wherever it can be found.
Absolutely. At FTN Fantasy, go into the accounts page and subscribe to the high stakes coaching package.
Guys, at _franchise12, which I love as a name if you draft or play best ball or any of that goodness, because it's just awesome. Nelson, you've been awesome, and we appreciate you sharing and hanging and talking football with us tonight. Guys, check him out there in Fantasyland on FTN. Literally, guys, a tool that you want in your toolbox, a weapon that you want when you're going to war with your league mates, for sure. Nelson, you've been awesome, brother. We appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Theo, Dan, another awesome guest, awesome show. Theo, you've been lining up the Sharks. Why don't you just give a little hint? Because we're at 134 right now. We haven't even mentioned the goodness that's coming on here in I think 48 hours, less than 48 hours. Why don't you remind people of that and anything else you want to remind them of before we close this out?
Yes, so we have Cody Carpentier coming on in 2 nights.
Just saying.
And then Andrew Schellenberg and I are going to do a half milli Billies on Thursday night. Last one, we absolutely crushed our draft, and looking forward to doing another one. So we have a lot of very good shows lined up in the district for the rest of July, and actually have some hitters coming in August. So Nelson was an unbelievable guest tonight, and expect more from the district.
Dan, another awesome show. Theo bringing in the shark. Just the net has been widespread in the ocean, and just bringing in these sharks. So a little last thought on the goodness tonight, and anything else you want to share that closes bad boy out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Nelson's one of those guys that he's the last person you want to see in your draft, and the first person you want to be talking to about strategy. So, and if you haven't caught some of the recent episodes of the GOAT District, we have, Theo went through some of the guys a little bit earlier in the show, but we have quite a few guys in the high stakes arena who have really shown that they can handle the pressure and that they can come up with winners. So, Nelson just fits just perfectly within that. And, we encourage you to go back if you haven't listened to those shows, and give them a listen and find out what it's all about. But thanks, Nelson, for coming on. It was absolutely fantastic having you on.
No, I appreciate it, guys. You guys, great hosts. So always a pleasure. Anytime you guys want me to come on again, I'll definitely be willing to come on. So
sold.
Awesome.
He doesn't realize that we're going to hold him up to that, and hopefully your agent is standing nearby and can work that out. But no, dude, we appreciate, we respect everything that you put out there, everything you do, and we're big fans. We appreciate you hanging with us tonight, guys. Again, just we keep bringing winners, we keep bringing guys that are doing it out there, players, fantasy players that are doing it out there. We talked about it tonight, walking the walk. And we just want to help you guys win your leagues. It's very simple. You can choose whether you subscribe, follow, all that goodness. We're going to keep bringing the hits, and we're going to keep bringing the goodness. So make sure you like, subscribe, all of it. We got Cody Carpentier later this week. I mean, that's, you follow Nelson. It's hard to follow Nelson enough. And Theo has found a way, and, we're going to keep doing it, guys. We're going to keep bringing in, I don't know. We got to find something. We did Shark Week, but I feel like the sharks keep coming in. Like the net's been, kind of devoured through, and the sharks are just kind of leaking in. So we might do like some Shark Edition shows or some. We'll figure it out. We'll send it out to our marketing team out here in the district. But guys, the people who are in the chat tonight were just amazing, guys. We love that you come in, you participate, you throw in the questions, you throw in the comments. That's amazing, man. That's like just that in itself is support for us. The likes, the subscribe, all of it. We appreciate it. Do it, smash it, like it. Don't be shy. We appreciate it. And guys, like I said, tune in Wednesday for the big show. We got Cody coming on. Any feedback? Anything you guys want to give us? Guests that you want to have on, topics you want to hit. Right now, we're focusing on how to draft because it's draft season, and we want to help you dominate your drafts. Hopefully, we did that tonight. Like I tell you every week, guys, stay safe, stay happy, be happy, keep dominating your drafts. Tune in, and we'll check you all later. See, that was not smooth at all. I'm going to try that again.
District, the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offers the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the and I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.